You know what's interesting about time? It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't pause because you weren't ready. It doesn't slow down because you needed more of it. And it certainly doesn't rewind because you wasted the last version of it convincing yourself that next year would be different. 2026 is here. And if you're sitting there thinking you can carry the same patterns, the same excuses, the same half-finished promises you made to yourself last January, you're not being honest. You're being comfortable. And comfort, in case no one told you, is just another word for slow decline. This isn't about motivation. I'm not here to pump you up or tell you that you can do anything if you just believe hard enough. That's not how any of this works. What I'm here to tell you is simpler and far less forgiving. You either rebuild yourself this year, or you spend another 12 months pretending you're fine while everything you said mattered quietly falls apart around you. Most people won't do it. Most people will nod along to this, feel something for a moment, and then go right back to the life they've been complaining about for years. They'll wait for the right time. They'll wait for the right feeling. They'll wait until it hurts less. And while they wait, time moves. Opportunities close. People move on. And the gap between who they are and who they said they'd become gets wider. You've felt that gap, haven't you? That quiet discomfort that shows up late at night when no one's watching. When you're alone with your thoughts, and there's no distraction strong enough to drown out the truth that you've been stalling, that you've been making the same promises and breaking them just as quietly, that the person you see in the mirror isn't the person you thought you'd be by now. And here's what no one wants to admit. That gap doesn't close by accident. It doesn't shrink because you wished it away or because you finally found the right playlist or the right quote. It closes when you stop lying to yourself about what needs to change. When you stop defending the version of you that isn't working. When you finally accept that some things in your life aren't going to fix themselves and waiting for them to feel easier is just another way of giving up. Rebuilding yourself isn't optional anymore. Not if you want to respect yourself. Not if you want to look back a year from now and actually see progress instead of just another set of excuses with better wording. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this sounds harsh. You're thinking maybe you're not that bad. Maybe you're doing okay. Maybe you just need a little more time to figure things out. But let me ask you something. How long have you been saying that? How many versions of "I'll start soon" have you already lived through? How many times have you set a goal, felt good about it for a week, and then let it dissolve the moment it required something from you that you weren't ready to give? You see, most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they're not honest. They tell themselves they want change. But what they really want is the feeling of wanting change. They want the idea of being better without the discomfort of actually becoming better. They want transformation that doesn't ask anything of them. And that's not how any of this works. Rebuilding yourself means you stop performing. You stop announcing your plans like they're achievements. You stop looking for validation every time you take a step forward. You stop needing people to notice that you're trying. Because here's the truth. The people who matter will see it without you saying a word. And the people who don't see it weren't paying attention to begin with. There's a certain kind of power that comes from moving in silence, from doing the work without the audience, from changing without needing credit for it. Most people can't handle that. They need the applause. They need the comments. They need someone to tell them they're doing well or it doesn't feel real. But you're not most people. You can be the person who disappears for a while and comes back different. Not louder, not flashier, just undeniably changed. The kind of change people feel before you even speak. The kind that doesn't need explanation because it's written in how you carry yourself, how you respond, how you no longer react to things that used to control you. That's what rebuilding looks like. It's not dramatic. It's not a moment. It's a series of private decisions that no one sees but everyone eventually feels. It's choosing not to defend yourself when someone misunderstands you. It's letting people think what they want while you keep building. It's walking away from arguments you know you could win because winning them wouldn't change anything that matters. It's learning that your energy is finite and some people, some situations, some battles just aren't worth what they cost you. You've been in rooms where you had to bite your tongue, haven't you? Where you had to sit there and let someone say something about you that wasn't true, and every instinct in you wanted to correct them, to explain, to make sure they knew the real story. But here's what you learn when you rebuild yourself. Explaining doesn't change minds. It just drains you. The people who are supposed to understand, you will. The ones who aren't, won't. And no amount of words will bridge that gap. So you stop trying. Not because you don't care, but because you care more about your peace than you do about their opinion. That's emotional discipline. That's control. That's the difference between someone who reacts to life and someone who directs it. And I'll tell you something else. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment people start paying attention. Because silence, real silence, the kind that comes from certainty, makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to sit with their assumptions. It removes the performance. And most people don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need their approval. You become unreadable. Not cold, not distant, just calm, unbothered, present, but not pressed. And that kind of presence is rare. Most people are performing all the time, trying to be seen a certain way, trying to manage how they're perceived, trying to control the narrative. But you don't need to control the narrative when you're living the truth. You don't need to explain your choices when your results speak for you. You don't need to convince anyone of anything when you're too busy building something real. And that's where most people get stuck. They spend so much time talking about what they're going to do that they never actually do it. They spend so much energy managing how they're seen that they forget to become someone worth seeing. Rebuilding yourself means you stop announcing and start executing. You stop posting about the gym and just go. You stop talking about the business and just build. You stop telling people you're changing and just let them notice when you have. Because here's the truth. Talk is cheap. Intentions are meaningless. The only thing that matters is what you actually do when no one's watching. The decisions you make when there's no reward attached. The work you put in when it's hard and boring and no one's cheering you on. That's where character gets built. Not in the highlight reel. Not in the success story people see at the end. But in the 1,000 small moments where you had a choice between comfort and growth. And you chose growth even though it hurt. Most people won't do that. Most people will choose comfort every single time and then wonder why their life feels small, why their relationships feel shallow, why their work feels meaningless, why they wake up tired even though they slept enough. It's not the sleep, it's the weight of unchosen potential. It's the quiet knowledge that you're capable of more and you're just not doing it. That's exhausting. That's what drains you, not the effort, the avoidance of effort. You know what's freeing? Finally doing the thing you've been avoiding. Finally having the conversation you've been putting off. Finally making the decision you've been circling for months. Finally admitting that something isn't working and actually doing something about it instead of just complaining. That's when you get your energy back. Not when life gets easier, but when you stop resisting what needs to happen. And rebuilding yourself, at its core, is about ending the resistance. It's about stopping the internal war between who you are and who you know you need to be. It's about closing that gap, not with force, not with some dramatic overnight transformation, but with consistent, quiet, unglamorous action. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need ideal conditions. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start and then keep going, even when it's boring, even when no one notices. Nice. Even when you don't see results yet, because results lag. They always do. You put in the work today, and you might not see anything for weeks, months, even. And that gap, that space between effort and evidence, that's where most people quit. They decide it's not working because they can't see it working. They decide they're wasting their time because the mirror hasn't changed, or the bank account hasn't moved, or the relationship hasn't shifted. But that's not how growth works. Growth happens in the dark, underground, out of sight. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. You've seen this before, haven't you? You've put in effort that didn't seem to matter. You've worked on something that felt pointless. And then one day, weeks later, maybe months later, something clicked, something shifted, and suddenly all that invisible work became visible. That's how this goes. That's how it's always gone. And the only people who get to see that moment are the ones who didn't quit during the invisible part. So when you rebuild yourself in 2026, you have to understand that most of it won't feel like progress. Most of it will feel like repetition, like you're doing the same thing over and over, and nothing's changing. But that's the process. That's what it costs. And here's what separates people who actually change from people who just talk about it. The people who change don't need to feel progress to keep going. They trust the process more than they trust their feelings. They know that feelings lie, that motivation comes and goes, that some days you'll feel strong and some days you'll feel like you're moving backwards. But the work doesn't care how you feel. The work just needs to get done. And the version of you that you're trying to become is on the other side of doing the work, even when you don't feel like it. Most people wait to feel like it. They wait for inspiration. They wait for energy. They wait for the stars to align. And while they wait, nothing changes. You don't wait. You just move. Tired, unmotivated, unsure, it doesn't matter. You move anyway. Because motion creates momentum, and momentum creates results. And results create belief. And belief makes the next step easier. But it starts with moving when you don't want to. That's the unlock. That's the thing no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Discipline isn't about feeling strong. It's about acting strong, even when you feel weak. It's about showing up even when showing up feels pointless. It's about honoring the commitment you made to yourself, even when no one else would know if you broke it. You would know, and that's enough. Because here's what happens when you start keeping promises to yourself. You start trusting yourself. You start believing that when you say you're going to do something, it actually means something. And that belief, that self-trust, that's the foundation everything else is built on. You can't build a life you respect if you don't respect yourself. And you can't respect yourself if you keep breaking your word to the person who matters most, you. So rebuilding starts there, with small promises, small commitments, things you can actually keep, not massive goals that sound impressive but collapse under their own weight. Just simple, repeatable actions that prove to yourself that you're serious this time. Maybe it's waking up at the same time every day. Maybe it's moving your body for 20 minutes. Maybe it's reading 10 pages. Maybe it's putting your phone down an hour before bed. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you said you'd do it and you did it. Today, tomorrow, the day after that. That's how you rebuild trust with yourself. Not with big declarations, with small, consistent proof. And once you have that foundation, once you've proven to yourself that you can be counted on, everything else gets easier. Not because the work gets easier, but because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're no longer wondering if you'll actually follow through. You know you will, because you've done it before, over and over, until it stopped being a question. That's the shift. That's when rebuilding stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. When the work you do isn't something you have to force anymore. It's just who you are now. But most people never get there. Most people stay stuck in the loop of starting and stopping, getting excited and burning out, making promises and breaking them. And every time they break one, it gets a little harder to believe the next one. You've been there, haven't you? You've felt that erosion of self-trust, that quiet disappointment every time you let yourself down. That creeping sense that maybe you're just not the kind of person who follows through. But that's not true. You're not broken. You're not incapable. You've just been operating from the wrong place. You've been trying to change from a place of shame or desperation or pressure. And none of those create lasting change. Lasting change comes from a different place. It comes from clarity, from decision, from the quiet, non-negotiable understanding that this is what needs to happen, and you're the only one who can make it happen. Not because you have to, but because you've decided to. And there's a massive difference between those two. Doing something because you have to makes you a victim. Doing something because you decided to makes you powerful. Same action. Completely different energy. When you rebuild yourself from decision, not desperation, everything changes. You stop needing external pressure. You stop needing someone to hold you accountable. You stop needing proof that it's working before you keep going. You just go because you decided, and your decisions mean something now. That's the version of you that you're building toward, the one who doesn't need convincing, the one who doesn't need conditions to be perfect, the one who sees what needs to happen and handles it without drama, without delay, without needing applause. That's quiet authority. That's internal power. That's the kind of strength most people never develop because they're too busy performing strength instead of becoming it. And here's what's interesting. The people who have real strength don't talk about it. They don't announce it. They don't need to. You feel it. You feel it in how they move, how they listen, how they respond, how they don't react to things that would send most people spiraling. They've learned something most people haven't. That reaction is weakness. That needing to respond to everything is a lack of control. That true power is in choosing what gets your energy and what doesn't. You've been giving your energy to the wrong things, haven't you? To people who don't deserve it, to situations that don't matter, to arguments that won't change anything, to thoughts that just loop and drain you. Rebuilding yourself means you take that energy back. You stop spending it on things that don't build you. You stop letting other people's chaos become your emergency. You stop carrying weight that isn't yours to carry. And that's hard, because you've been conditioned to care, to help, to fix, to explain, to make sure everyone's okay, to manage how you're perceived, to keep the peace even when keeping the peace costs you your peace. But you can't build yourself and carry everyone else at the same time. You can't heal and keep reopening the wound to prove you're okay. You can't grow and stay in environments that require you to stay small. At some point, you have to choose. And most people won't. Most people will stay uncomfortable forever because changing feels scarier than staying the same. But you're different. Or at least, you're deciding to be. You're deciding that 2026 is the year you stop explaining and start executing. The year you stop performing and start building. The year you stop waiting for permission and just take what's yours. Not loudly, not arrogantly, just calmly, confidently, like someone who already knows how this ends. Because you do. You know that if you show up every day, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching, even when it doesn't feel like it's working, you win. You know that consistency beats intensity, that quiet progress beats loud promises, that the person who keeps going when it's boring is the person who gets everything they said they wanted. You've just never been that person before. Not fully, not consistently. You've had moments, flashes, streaks, but you've never locked in for an entire year and just refused to break. This is that year. This is that year. Not because the calendar changed, not because you feel different, but because you finally understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. That no one is coming to save you. No one is coming to fix this. No one is coming to hand you the life you want. You either build it yourself or you live with what's left over. And what's left over isn't enough anymore, is it? It stopped being enough a while ago. You've just been pretending it was, telling yourself that things are fine, that you're doing okay, that you'll get to the important stuff later, that you just need a little more time. But time doesn't wait. And fine isn't good enough when you know you're capable of more. You've felt that, haven't you? That low hum of dissatisfaction that follows you around, that shows up in quiet moments, that whispers to you when you're lying in bed at night. That reminds you of all the things you said you'd do and didn't, all the potential you let sit there, all the chances you didn't take because you were waiting to feel ready. And here's the thing about waiting to feel ready. You never will. Ready isn't a feeling. It's a decision. It's the moment you stop asking if you can and start proving that you will. Most people never make that decision. They spend years circling it, thinking about it, talking about it, waiting for some external force to push them into it. And while they wait, life moves. Opportunities pass, people move on, and the gap between who they are and who they could have been becomes permanent. You don't want that. You wouldn't be here if you did. You're here because part of you knows that you're done waiting, done stalling, done pretending that things will change on their own. You're here because you're ready to stop being the person who talks about change and start being the person who embodies it. And that's not easy. It's not supposed to be. If it were easy, everyone would do it. But most people won't. Most people will read something like this, feel something for a moment, and then go right back to the same patterns they've been running for years. They'll nod along. They'll agree. They'll say they're going to do something different. And then they won't. Because agreeing and doing are two completely different things. And most people are excellent at agreeing. They agree that they need to change. They agree that they're not where they want to be. They agree that they're capable of more. But when it comes time to actually do the work, to actually make the sacrifice, to actually choose discomfort over convenience, they fold. They tell themselves they'll start Monday. They tell themselves they just need to get through this week first. They tell themselves they'll be ready once things calm down. And things never calm down. So they never start. Or they start and stop. Start and stop. Over and over until starting doesn't even feel real anymore. It's just something they do to feel better about not actually changing. You've done that before. You know what that feels like. The cycle of good intentions and weak follow-through. The frustration of knowing what you need to do, but not doing it. The shame of breaking promises to yourself that no one else even knew you made. But here's what you need to understand. That version of you, the one who starts and stops, the one who means well but doesn't follow through, that's not who you are. That's just who you've been. And who you've been doesn't determine who you're becoming. You get to decide that. Right now. Today. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when you feel motivated. Not when life gets easier. Now. And deciding means cutting off every other option. It means burning the bridges back to the old version of yourself. It means making it so uncomfortable to stay the same that moving forward becomes the only logical choice. Most people don't do that. They keep one foot in the old life, just in case the new one doesn't work out. They keep the backup plan. They keep the exit. They keep the option to go back to comfortable if uncomfortable gets too hard. And that's why they never actually change. Because change requires commitment. Full commitment. The kind that doesn't have a plan B. The kind that says, I'm doing this no matter what. The kind that doesn't negotiate with discomfort or doubt or fear. You either commit or you don't. There's no in-between. And if you're still trying to find the in-between, you're not ready. You're still hoping for an easier way. And there isn't one. The only way through is through. The only way to become the person you want to be is to do the things that person would do. Every day. Even when you don't feel like it. Even when no one's watching. Even when the results aren't showing yet. That's the price. And it's non-negotiable. But here's what no one tells you. The price of not changing is higher. The price of staying the same, of wasting another year, of looking back 12 months from now and realizing you're exactly where you are today, that's the real cost. And most people pay it without even realizing it. They trade long-term fulfillment for short-term comfort. They trade growth for convenience. They trade the life they could have for the life that's easy to maintain. And then they wonder why they feel empty. Why nothing feels meaningful. Why they're going through the motions but not actually living. It's because they chose safety over significance. They chose comfort over character. They chose to stay small because growing felt too uncertain. But you can't stay small and expect to feel whole. You can't play it safe and expect to feel alive. You can't avoid discomfort and expect to build something worth having. At some point, you have to risk something. You have to put yourself out there. You have to try, even though you might fail. You have to show up even though people might judge you. You have to build even though it might not work. And that's terrifying. Because failure is real. Judgment is real. Disappointment is real. But you know what's worse? Never trying. Never knowing. Never giving yourself the chance to see what you're actually capable of. Most people will die with their potential still inside them. They'll take it to the grave. They'll spend their whole lives wondering what if, and never finding out because they were too afraid to try. You don't want that. You wouldn't be reading this if you did. You want to know. You want to see what happens when you actually commit. When you actually show up. When you actually do the work without quitting the moment it gets hard. And here's what happens. You find out that you're stronger than you thought. That you're more capable than you gave yourself credit for. That the fear was louder than the actual obstacle. That the thing you've been avoiding wasn't as impossible as you made it out to be. You find out that you've been holding yourself back. That the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the story you keep telling yourself about why you can't have it. And that story, that narrative you've been running, it's not even yours. It's something you picked up along the way. Something someone said to you once. Something you decided was true about yourself because it was easier to believe you couldn't than to try and risk being wrong. But it's not true. It never was. You're not too old. You're not too late. You're not too far behind. You're not broken. You're not incapable. You're just scared. And scared is normal. Scared is human. But scared doesn't mean stop. It just means proceed with awareness. And most people misinterpret that. They think scared means don't do it. They think fear is a sign that they're on the wrong path. But fear is just your system preparing you for something new, something uncertain, something that requires you to grow. And growth always feels uncomfortable. It's supposed to. You're expanding beyond what's familiar. You're challenging beliefs you've held for years. You're risking failure. You're risking judgment. You're risking being seen as someone who tried and didn't make it. But here's what you need to understand. The people who judge you for trying are the same people who never had the courage to try themselves. They're the ones sitting on the sidelines criticizing people who are actually in the arena, and their opinion means nothing. You know whose opinion matters? Yours. And the version of you that you're trying to become. That's it. Those are the only two voices that get a vote. Everyone else is just noise. And if you're rebuilding yourself in 2026, one of the first things you need to do is turn down the noise. Stop listening to people who aren't where you're trying to go. Stop taking advice from people who haven't done what you're trying to do. Stop letting people who settled for less convince you to settle too. Because misery loves company, and mediocrity is contagious. And the moment you start rising, the moment you start changing, the moment you start doing something different, people are going to notice. And some of them aren't going to like it. They're going to tell you you're changing. They're going to tell you you're different. They're going to tell you you're acting weird. And they're going to say it like it's a bad thing. But it's not. It's proof that it's working. It's proof that you're no longer the same person who fit into their box. It's proof that you've outgrown the version of yourself that made them comfortable. And that's okay. You're not here to make people comfortable. You're here to build a life that you respect. And sometimes that means outgrowing people, outgrowing environments, outgrowing versions of yourself that you've been clinging to because letting go felt too final. But letting go is necessary. You can't rebuild while holding on to everything that needs to be released. You can't grow while gripping the past. You can't become someone new while trying to stay the same. At some point, you have to choose. And most people won't. They'll try to do both. They'll try to change without actually changing anything. They'll try to grow without letting go. They'll try to become someone new while staying loyal to who they were. And it doesn't work. You end up stuck, frustrated, exhausted, because you're trying to live in two places at once, and it's tearing you apart. You have to pick. Old life or new one. Comfort or growth. Who you were or who you're becoming. And if you pick growth, if you pick becoming, you have to accept that some people won't come with you. Some people will stay where they are. Some people will resent you for moving forward. Some people will try to pull you back. Let them stay. Let them resent. Let them pull. You keep moving. Because this isn't about them. This was never about them. This is about you finally choosing yourself. Finally prioritizing your growth over their comfort. Finally deciding that your potential matters more than their opinion. And that's not selfish. That's self-respect. That's understanding that you only get one life, and you're not going to waste it trying to make people who don't support you feel better about the fact that you're actually doing something with yours. You've spent enough time managing other people's feelings, enough time shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were too small for you, enough time staying quiet because speaking up made people uncomfortable. But you weren't built to stay quiet. You weren't built to stay small. You weren't built to play it safe and hope no one notices. You were built for more. And you know it. You've always known it. You've just been ignoring it because acting on it felt too risky, too uncertain, too exposed. But exposure is part of the process. Risk is part of the process. Uncertainty is part of the process. And if you're not willing to accept that, you're not ready to rebuild. Because rebuilding means tearing down what isn't working. And that's messy. It's uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. You have to admit that some things you've been doing aren't serving you. That some beliefs you've been holding aren't true. That some people you've been keeping around aren't helping you grow. And admitting that feels like failure. It feels like you wasted time. Like you made mistakes. Like you should have known better. But it's not failure. It's awareness. And awareness is the first step to change. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge. You can't change what you won't confront. You can't rebuild what you're still pretending is fine. So you stop pretending. You get honest, brutally honest, about where you are, about how you got here, about what needs to change, about what you've been avoiding. And that honesty, that clarity, that's where power lives. Not in pretending you have it all figured out, but in admitting you don't and deciding to figure it out anyway. Most people can't do that. They're too attached to looking like they know what they're doing, too invested in the image, too afraid of being seen as someone who's struggling or uncertain or still learning. But the people who actually win, who actually build lives they're proud of, they're the ones who stopped caring about looking good and started caring about getting better. They're the ones who admitted they didn't have all the answers, who asked for help, who tried things and failed and tried again, who looked stupid sometimes and kept going anyway, because they understood something most people don't. That looking good and getting better are two different paths, and you can't walk both at the same time. You either perform progress or you make progress. You either talk about change or you live it. You either build an image or you build a life. And if you're rebuilding yourself in 2026, you're choosing the latter. You're choosing the life, the real one, the one that's messy and uncertain and doesn't always look impressive from the outside but feels right on the inside. Because that's what this is really about. Not external validation. Not proving something to people who don't matter. Not looking successful. It's about internal alignment. It's about waking up and actually respecting the person you see in the mirror. It's about going to bed knowing you did what you said you'd do. It's about living in a way that doesn't require you to lie to yourself about who you are. That's the life worth building. Not the one that looks good on paper. The one that feels true when no one's watching. And building that life requires a level of honesty most people aren't willing to bring. It requires you to stop blaming, stop making excuses, stop pointing at circumstances or other people or bad timing. It requires you to look at your life and say, this is where I am, this is what I've done, and this is what I'm going to do differently. Not tomorrow. Not when things calm down. Not when you feel ready. Now. This is where it stops being a thought and becomes a line you don't cross back over. Not a speech. Not a moment of clarity. A decision. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to explain it. You don't need anyone to understand it. You just move differently from here on out. You wake up and you do what you said you would do. Not because you're motivated. Not because you feel inspired, but because this is who you are now. The version of you that waits is done. The version of you that hesitates is done. The version of you that keeps asking for permission is done. From this point forward, there is only alignment or avoidance. And you already know which one costs you more. Some days will feel slow. Some days will feel pointless. Some days you'll wonder if any of it matters. It does. Not because someone is watching, but because you are. And that's the part most people never understand. The work isn't about results first. It's about becoming someone who doesn't betray themselves. That's what rebuilding actually means. Not becoming louder. Not becoming harder. Not becoming someone else. Becoming solid. So when 2026 ends and you look back at this year, it won't be about how much you accomplished. It will be about whether you kept your word. Whether you stood your ground, whether you became someone you respect, nothing else matters. You don't need another reminder. You don't need another push. You already know what needs to happen. So do it quietly, do it consistently, and let time do what it always does. Expose the difference. That's it.